Hi friends, I'm recording this video from within the forest next to my home, sitting atop the treehouse that I built with my kids. And it's the perfect setting, I think, and as I continue, I hope you'll understand why. So for my final project, I chose to make a pointillism piece based on a picture I took of a path next to our home. This is not a spectacular path, it's not a famous landscape, a dramatic mountain trail or some breathtaking view I had to travel far to see. It's just an ordinary path, one I've walked countless times and yet have rarely, maybe even never, taken the time to be amazed by it. So let me back up. The idea for my project follows from an insight that stood out to me from Zula's book and also from the second and the third lectures in the course on mystical spirituality. And the insight was this, that mysticism does not begin with escape from the world, but with, I guess, like a deeper attention to the beauty and the wonder of just like the simple, everyday things of life. And so Zula describes the mystical journey in three movements: being amazed, letting go, and resisting. So, like many of us, my default is to move through the world too quickly to actually notice it, right? And so I have this path near my house, but familiarity can become a form of blindness to all that the path offers. I reduce the path to its utility. This is where I walk. This is how I get from point A to point B. And so too often I'll have my head in a phone, or I'll be, listening to a podcast or whatever, and I'm just completely oblivious to the path itself. And so Zula's description of amazement challenged me to slow down and to take notice. She tells that story of her young son stopping in awe before the simplicity of a house number. And that really stayed with me. It made me wonder, what have I stopped seeing simply because I think I already know it? And so on my walk down this path, just 50 or so meters from where I'm standing right now, or sitting right now, I did something I've never done. I slowed down, and then I strayed off of the path. I walked into the forest and I stopped. I noticed things. I noticed the woodpeckers. I noticed the melting snow, the trees swaying. And then I went back onto the path and I crossed onto the other side, and here I found a different kind of forest altogether. Trees were spread out. It seemed like there was a clean sort of ground without a lot of bush and brush on the ground. And there was this raging river full from the spring melt. And to think that this beauty of creation is all right next to my home, it's kind of cool. And so I can say quite honestly, in the beautiful words of Zula, that the veil of triviality was torn apart by radical amazement of what was beheld. And so here is where my art piece and this medium of pointillism became important. So first I need to concede that I am not what one might call artistic. I kind of gave up on expressing myself through song or poetry or dance or painting around, the 10th grade, when my grades in these subjects boldly suggested that I focus my creative inklings elsewhere. That's fine. It's humbling, but I've accepted that. And so pointillism is kind of forgiving in that way. But more to the point, okay, sorry about that pun. More to the point, pointillism forces you to slow down. So I did not just want to make a picture of the path. I wanted the method of capturing the path to embody the insight itself, if that makes sense. So pointillism is deliberately slow. The image is built through small dots, repeated one at a time. And I did this sort of rough calculation based on the size of the canvas and how many dots per sort of square centimeter. And I calculated about 5,000 dots were placed. And so this painstaking process forced my attention. In that sense, the method itself of applying dots became a form of like a spiritual discipline in a sense. It reflected the intentional walk of awe that I embarked on, making me slow down enough to notice the path all over again and to once again sort of be filled with wonder. So this first stage of mysticism is described by Zula as the via positiva, the way of radical amazement, of bliss, of praise, right? And it's no wonder that she uses a rose to represent this stage. Amazement is not necessarily about seeing something new, but sometimes it's also about seeing the old, the familiar, the ordinary, as if for the first time. And for me, that walk down the path and the subsequent sort of artistic rendering through Pointillism became more than scenery. It became more than just art. It became a site of encounter, and perhaps you can even say a form of transformation for me. Now, at the same time, Zula insists that amazement is not merely positive thinking, which is really helpful for me because this is for me, but oftentimes there's like this stereotype I hold of mysticism that it's all sort of woo-woo. And so, as Zula states, there is a bleak side to amazement that renders one mute. She's got such a great way with words. And so a genuine mystical journey is not meant to put our critical capacity to sleep. If I simply use this project to say, look how beautiful the world is, and I ignored the difficult ecological and social realities that surrounded this, I would be missing the mystical journey altogether. And here's where I can't help but sort of reflect on my own advantage, my own advantages of my own positionality. So it's easy for me to live with my head in the clouds, forgetting about the very real hardships by many here in my community, Thunder Bay. People face economic exploitation, there's rampant addiction, there are ecological crises, there's all sorts of other barriers. And so while this project and this path center around my own experience and it sort of serves as a catalyst for my own mystical journey, I'm very aware of the need to resist universalizing this, as if everyone encounters the world in the same way, or that such a journey is even accessible to everyone. In this sense, mysticism as a journey, despite what Zula wants to be accessible to all humans, I think may be easier said than done. And there can be more to be said about that, but I think I'll leave that for now. So let me return to this journey. The second stage, the via negativa, as she calls it, or the letting go, is marked by the dark night. And for me, I live in this culture, like many of us, that trains me to move quickly, to consume quickly, to produce quickly, and then just to move on. And so Zula's critique of consumerism speaks directly to this. She writes about the need for purification, not simply from ancient desires, but from our growing dependency on consumerism, the mechanisms of consumption, the addictions of everyday working life. And so in that sense, the second stage of engagement for this project was to resist my own habits of efficiency and to let go of that need for productivity. In a sense, each dot then became a sort of small, like a refusal to bend my knee to the cultural surroundings and the tools of distraction that way too often engulf me. I could not, swipe past this image. I could not just skim it and on to the next thing. I had to attend to it slowly, meticulously, intentionally. So Pointillism models the process of letting go for me because I am forced to let go of efficiency, of speed, of the desire to finish quickly, and the need for total control. Strangely, though I suppose predictably, according to Zula, as I continued in this journey through amazement and letting go, something else began to form in me. And this is really cool. Maybe this is the culmination of the mystical experience she's referring to, because I cannot offer words that would adequately encapsulate this. I have a favorite quote from C.S. Lewis that it made me think of, and it's from his essay, The Weight of Glory, and I've memorized it because it always seems to come up in my life. But it says this: at present we are on the outside of the world, the wrong side of the door. We discern the freshness and purity of morning, but they do not make us fresh and pure. We cannot mingle with the splendors we see, but all the leaves of the New Testament are rustling with the rumor that it will not always be so. Someday, God willing, we shall get in. And so the beauty and the splendor of the path, the forest, the raging river, none of this automatically makes me whole simply by being present to it. And yet, the rumor that Lewis speaks of began to come true. Something in me was changed, or perhaps better said, something in me was disturbed. A compulsion, perhaps, something that would allow me to, in fact, mingle with the splendors that we see. Because once I realized the same forest was under threat, that ache became impossible to keep private. The beauty I had slowed down to notice was not just inviting me into wonder or gratitude, it was calling me into responsibility, to take action. And here is where I think Zula's third stage of resistance, or the via transformativa, began to make sense for me. So for Zula, genuine, a mystical experience cannot end in just a private consolation. It cannot just be me sitting peacefully in the woods, grateful for what I've seen, and that's the end of it. If amazement opens my eyes and letting go loosens my grip on the habits of speed and consumption and control, then resistance is when all that compulsion leads to a response in me. The mystical journey then moves outward, right? It becomes compassion, it becomes justice, and this refusal to accept the world as it is when it violates the ecological beauty of what is meant to be. And here, friends, is where the other shoe drops. I alluded to this just a moment ago, but I haven't mentioned it yet. These forests that I am in right now are slated to be turned into 1,200 housing units beginning this summer. This green space is to be no more. Talk about ecological crisis. The work has already begun, and it breaks my heart. This journey, prompted by amazement and letting go, was to offer some form of response. Resistance, Zula calls it. So I began to organize, and I decided that maybe the most faithful next step for me to take here was to form a group of concerned citizens in my neighborhood. So I spoke with neighbors. I collected phone numbers. I began a WhatsApp group to share information and to coordinate responses and provide a more consolidated voice in response to the planned development. Now, I realize this is a small action, but it is an action. And it moved the entire project for me from private contemplation to public engagement, I guess. So I'm no longer simply making little dots on a canvas. I was trying, however imperfectly, to connect people who care about this place before decisions about it are made entirely without us. I just don't think that that's fair. Now, who knows where all this will lead, but I am compelled to carry on, to enter into the freshness and the purity of the path, of the forest, of the river, to allow it to transform me in a way that affects the world around me positively. It's funny how a canvas comprised of 5,000 dots on it that began as just an exercise in attention has now become something closer to a map of transformation, right? So if I were to sum up, this project has taught me that the mystical life is not an escape from this world, but a deeper entrance into it. So to be amazed is to see again. To let go is to loosen my grip on the habits that keep me numb. And to resist is to allow what we have seen to spur us on to take action. And so I end this project still sitting here in the forest, still unsure of what is to come, but no longer able to just call this place or that path ordinary, right? This has become for me a site of wonder and of grief, of responsibility and of hope. And maybe that, I think, is perhaps what it means, at least in part of what it means, to mingle with the splendors we see. Thanks for listening. I hope these thoughts have been an encouragement to you on your own mystical journey. Take care.